the reality of what has happened here in Iran, because I was in Iran, you were in the United States. We both were witnessing something big happening, even a war breaking out between the two countries, which was of major concern, in my opinion, on my part, because I don't see anything good coming out of a war between the United States and Iran for anybody, not for the United States, not for Iran, not for the region. What's your assessment? What's your evaluation of what has happened and what is happening right now, considering the policies toward Iran?
It's almost impossible to ferret out what strategy, if there is any strategy whatsoever, in the current U.S. administration's mind, or I should say minds. Um, you see combat power, carrier battle groups, most indicative of it, steaming towards the region. You see, ostensibly at least, I've heard there have been feelers from Tehran answered by feelers from Washington that they should resume talks. And that's scary because, the precedent we set for that. Um, on the other hand, the non combatant evacuation operations from the areas that Iran might strike, like Al Udeid or some other place like that, Bahrain, have, as I understand it, ceased, and they didn't really take that many people out. There aren't that many people to take out in some cases, but in Bahrain, for example, I would have expected that the fleet headquarters and the supporting places around it would have been evacuated. That's a very ripe target, if you will, just as Al Udeid is. So I don't know how to read these signals. Are we just posturing in preparation for more dialogue? Or are we putting dialogue aside completely? Or are we doing both and using the dialogue as we did before to lull the Iranians into thinking something positive is going to happen other than more? And then we're going to strike. And then comes the question of, if we strike, how will we strike? Will it be what I think would be absolutely ineffective, other than maybe killing a few people and making a lot of people truly angry again? Airstrikes. That's all I can see that we would be bringing to bear. And what does that mean? That means Iran has a significant decision to make, because the airstrikes are not going to do that much damage unless they're around the clock, 7 or 8 or 14 days. And that means three carrier battle groups minimum. It means flying squadrons into the existing airfields in the region. I don't know, Nima. I don't know how to answer your question. It looks like a bunch of children playing around in my mind. I don't pretend to know what Hegseth is thinking and doing, and I don't pretend to know what Trump now is thinking and doing, because he's been all over the map with regard to Iran. Everything from saying that he's a non-war loving person, to doing what he did before with regard to the B-2s and with regard to the diplomacy that was going on at the time he struck. Um, there's a maybe this is part of his strategy, is to keep the Iranians completely on their heels, not to know what's coming or when it's coming. And then you got to factor in Netanyahu. I was looking at the so-called ceasefire and the experiment phase one the other day, and they've killed 30 to 40 to 50 Palestinians a day. Throw in the West Bank and the turmoil there, maybe close to 100 a day. So what are we going into in terms of phase two? And now Netanyahu is saying that because of the cooperation of the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, things are calming down somewhat. Um, I don't know how to read that situation anymore either. We are embarked on what to me looks like a fool's errand with this peace group. We even have people turning it down. $1 billion, I think, to buy your way into being on the peace board. Um, I don't know, Nima. I can't. I don't even pretend to know what's going on in that region anymore.
What was so obvious to me here in Iran, the war, it was the way that the Trump administration and those people who are running the show behind the scene when it comes to the, you know, to the mainstream media, to alternative media, X, all of that, they were pushing somehow to bring the, the son of the former Shah of Iran as an alternative, to bring it back, to Iran, and saying that this is an alternative for the future of Iran, to somehow convince not only Iranians but also all these, you know, the Arab states in the region, that this is going to be a good option for you as well. But it doesn't seem that anybody going to buy that.
I don't.
I would assume that's the Netanyahu's strategy as well.
I don't think Trump buys it. From what he said, I don't think he buys it either. I don't think that is in his plans at all. In fact, I think he would say that was nonsense. That he's going to do something kinetic, Connecticut. I think I'm fairly sure depends on Bibi Netanyahu. I don't think Trump really wants a war with Iran. I don't think he ever has. I think much of his action is programmed by Miriam Adelson's money and Bibi Netanyahu as a consequence. I think he would probably like to come to some kind of settlement with Iran that would ricochet across the chambers of the world and be a testimony to another, the ninth war he stopped or whatever. But Bibi's is the unknown in this. I go back to my previous statements from which I have not withdrawn. Bibi will not rest until he has attacked Iran in a significant way and brought about, in his mind, regime change, and made Iran a vassal state to Israel because it's the only real power. If you discount Turkey and you discount the other Arab countries that, besides Egypt, and if Egypt is an Arab country, and Jordan and others, if you discount them, the only obstacle to Israel's doing what it wishes to do whenever it wishes to do it, in Netanyahu's eyes, is Iran. And he wants it gone. He wants it a vassal state. He wants it a subservient state, or if not that, then in disaster, just falling apart, civil war, whatever. Um, and I don't think Trump can back away from that. So he's got that to do. I think this, I don't know if you read about it, but this seismic activity near Dimona, and some people speculating in the press that it might have been an Israeli nuclear test in some respects. I understand it was 20 meters underground. That would be a hell of a chamber. But it was not necessarily discounted by Israel. So they're either using it or it was indeed something like that. And they're trying to threaten whom? Are they trying to threaten Iran or are they trying to threaten Donald Trump? Is Netanyahu using this prospect of his using nuclear weapons as a threat to Donald Trump? If you don't do it, I'll use a nuclear weapon. If you don't come and help me do this conventionally, I'll use a nuclear weapon. I don't know. I don't even know how to treat this business of the Negev in this, what was it, 2KT or not 2KT, but 2 on the Richter scale or whatever, seismic event in the Negev. It was in very awkward timing, if you will. I mean, the Israelis were at Dimona, they were doing things at Dimona, and all of a sudden this occurs. I don't know. I don't know, but I wouldn't put it past Netanyahu. I'm told that previously the reason he got Trump to do what he did with regard to the nuclear weapon sites in Iran and other things that we did, like help Israel make its strikes, its airstrikes, the reason he came along and agreed to do that was because Netanyahu threatened to use a nuclear weapon if he did. I wouldn't put that a foot past Netanyahu. So these are dangerous implications in my mind, these nuclear implications. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope that was just a seismic event, a small earthquake or something. But it brings me back to the proposition I think I discussed it with you one time. Had I been Iran, I'd have made a nuclear weapon. Yeah, I would have built one, and I would have said, "Here it is. Okay, now we have a standoff. Let's stop doing what we're doing. Uh, we're here to stay. You seem to be alluding to the fact that you're there to stay. I'm not sure that's true anymore, um, but they didn't. They didn't. So that Netanyahu always had that trump card.
I think your take is making sense to me because Netanyahu really wants to influence Donald Trump. He wants to convince him that this war would be a game changer for the United States. And it's not just about what Netanyahu is militarily is trying to do, but you look at the way that they're playing with the son of the Shah of Iran. I looking at what he's doing. I don't know if you saw his interview on Fox News. He said, "Just go strike Iran. It doesn't matter if Israel or the United States go and do it." And it's all about making new wars, Larry. It's all about starting a new war. And they're hoping that the outcome of this war would be beneficial to Israel primarily and then to the United States. The problem is the reality of what's going on in Iran and what you see in the mainstream media outside of Iran. They're not even comparable. They're not even close.
Nima, our media is lost. In the United States, our media is lost. It is either a wholesale proponent and doesn't even know it in some cases of the government and shields its line like it was a grifter itself, or it's completely out of touch. And it's, as we've discussed before, it's completely out of touch because they no longer have international sections. They no longer have people on the ground. I was interested this morning in seeing a piece in the online New York Times about Venezuela by someone who actually knows and has lived in Venezuela. They found him. I think he's a Russian, but he's been in and out of Venezuela a lot. So he wrote a piece for the Times this morning. That's the first time the Times, the gray lady, the newspaper with all the news that's fit to print, has said anything cogent about Venezuela because they have no one on the ground. And that's true of every media source in America virtually. So they don't know what's going on. So what do? They take the CIA, they take the government, they take whatever spokesman comes out and gives them the story at their word, and they print it. So we don't have a media in this country. We don't have anything in this country in terms of a media other than what you're doing now, what podcasts do and alternative media does. And that's why it's picking up steam and taking audience share away from these people, both visual and print. But it's a hell of a thing for a democracy, allegedly a democracy, that has no newspapers. You know, Thomas Jefferson said if he had to choose between newspapers and government, he'd pick newspapers. He wasn't president when he said that, but we just don't have anything. So the American people are in the dark and think that what you were just describing and what the papers here described and are still talking about it. Iran is reeling. It's just reeling. It's been pulverized. You know, it is not the truth. And you know it. People in Iran know it. People in the region probably to a degree know it. I don't know how much brainwashing is going on in Israel. I know Netanyahu is a professional brainwasher, but the situation is not real. Now, let's talk about Donald Trump, though. Donald Trump covets Greenland. He covets Mexico. He covets Canada. He covets territory that abuts his own. He does not covet Southwest Asia. And I don't think that's a stupid proposition. I think that's a smart proposition. What do I want in Southwest Asia, and why would I believe Southwest Asia threatens me? I don't. But I've got this woman named Miriam who's giving me tons of money and going to give me tons more. I got other Zionist billionaires giving me money and so forth. So I've got to act like I do. If Bibi wants to do something over there, that's okay. Go ahead and do it. If he gets himself in a mess, that's tough. That'd get him out of my hair. I really don't think Trump wants a war with Iran. If he gets one, if he is part of one, it will be Bibi Netanyahu and his benefactors, you know, reason. It'll be their prompting. It'll be their war.
The problem, Larry, is when you go that far on, the propaganda against Iran and making everything, preparing the ground for a new war, that is hugely dangerous because anybody, the Netanyahu administration can make a decision and do something stupid, and everything can
Right?
get out of hand.
I think they've been doing things stupid for a long
Yeah.
time. You know,
Yeah.
maybe the Israelis, the bulk of them, I still see the polls telling me the bulk of the Israelis that are left in Israel, Jewish Israelis left in Israel, you know, don't even hold their nose anymore and agree to what he's doing. They're for it 100%. They want him to finish it. They want him to finish off every last Palestinian or ship them to, Sudan or Somaliland or wherever. They are still very much in his pocket for what he's doing. They don't necessarily like him as an individual. Those polls are different, but they are in his back pocket for what he's doing. I could say something really glaringly. They'll call me an anti-Semite, but they deserve everything they get because they want this. They want the killing. They want the bloodshed. I don't know if you saw that. Ralph Nader put out the report by Francesca Albanese. There are a couple of points in there that she takes that are depart majorly from the common word about Gaza. But the one that departs massively and that Ralph thinks she's right on is 600,000 dead Palestinians, 75% of whom are women and children. And, the Hamas Health Ministry figures are just way off. I have always thought it was somewhere upwards of 150, 200,000. And these people are going to have graves in the concrete. They're going to be buried in the concrete. They're going to plow over it. The phase two, phase three, whatever, which Netanyahu seems singularly uninterested in, is going to see Gaza become another part of Israel with all those dead people under 20 feet of concrete. And Donald Trump's going to pronounce it another war that he negotiated a peace in.
I think that is one of the alternatives to understand what's going on. When you go, the propaganda, what's going on between the United States and Iran, between Iran and Israel, what is happening right now, considering Iran and all these Arab states together with Turkey are somehow involved. Turkey, as you know, is dealing with huge difficulties in Syria, as these ISIS fighters being released from prison, and it's hugely destabilizing the whole region. This sort of activity that is happening. Turkey Erdogan today he said that we are we are backing our brothers and sisters in Iran, against this Israeli-backed sedition. We know the difference between Iran and Turkey when it comes to the situation in Gaza. But Turkey, on the other hand, understands the situation, these difficulties they're facing in Syria. It's a very complicated region, Larry, because of Syria. Syria has become in my opinion, is the nuclear bomb in the region, after all.
I don't necessarily disagree with that. I've always thought that if Assad's either one of the Assads, the father or the son's hand were taken off Syria, we would regret it. like we did, for example, in a narrower sense, but it's still a bloody minded sense, Libya, when we took Gaddafi's hand off Libya. No matter what you thought of either Assad, and they were both bloody minded men, they did keep a reasonable amount of control in what could be and is, geographically speaking, a very, very dangerous piece of territory. And now we're seeing it. We're seeing those hands having been removed and euphoria amongst Syrians, a return from the diaspora, if you will, and back into Syria. Now we're seeing them leaving again because it's become so dangerous. And I don't blame them. So, yeah, Syria has always been a dangerous component in Southwest Asia, positioned as it is between Lebanon and its problems and Iran and its relative solidity, um, and used by both sides to disturb the other. And now we're seeing what's happened with the strong hand taken out of it. I'm not in any way trying to make a case for either Assad or people like that, Gaddafi, but if you don't have some better plan for what's going to happen in the aftermath of removing this sort of thing, think of Tito in Yugoslavia, for example, and think of what happened to Yugoslavia after the Cold War was ended and the brakes were off and Milosevic came in, and that's the kind of thing that happens. And if you don't have some sort of plan as you're going forward, some sort of strategy to deal with that, then why are you even in there mucking around with it like we are all the time, 24/7? But you can talk to your blind in the face to people in the CIA and in the State Department and elsewhere about that sort of thing, and you won't get anywhere. This is not over, that's for sure. Syria's situation is not a done deal, and it's not euphoria and peace and wonderful times. And Iran's situation, here's the real kicker for me. Iran's the most stable country in the region. It is the most stable country in the region. And I include the Gulf states in that. Iran is as much a democracy, too, as the United States is. It's got a different approach to it, perhaps, but it has a parliament. The parliament does have power. They are elected to office. It has as many components of democracy as does the United States. So it's preposterous to call them a theocratic state in the sense that there's no democracy and everything is forced. So here you got 90 million people in a stable state with a reasonable functioning, with lots of democratic elements government, and you're trying to take it out? Look at Syria, look at Libya, look at almost any place we have done this. Look at Iraq for that matter. They're still fighting to get their act together. Why would you want to go ahead and have a war with Iran? It's nonsense. It's nonsense. And I do think Trump senses that. I know I'm giving him credit that others don't want to give him now. A whole multitude of people don't want to give him credit. But I don't think he wants a war with Iran. I think it's Bibi that wants the war with Iran. And I think Trump has got influencers, moneyed influencers, who are keeping him glued to Bibi. I think he would rather not be.